Okay, welcome, Matthew Campbell.
Thanks, Mark. Hiya. How you doing?
Well, I wish we weren't having this conversation, but it is what it is, isn't it?
Indeed.
So, for those of you watching, Matt and I go back 40 years. We don't look old enough, I know, but we go back 40 years to school in a village in Northamptonshire, which seems quite strange to me, but that's another story. So Matt is here because, in fact, I'm going to let you explain why we're having this chat, Matt, because I've tried to introduce you before, and every time I do, to friends and stuff, and I hate that introduction because we're just mates, but you've agreed to talk to me about something very significant, so I'll let you do the talking.
Yeah. So, as Mark said, we go back to the same class at school, age 11, going 12, whatever it is, start of secondary school. And I had a brother, Jeff, who was a year younger than me. He went to the same school, knew Mark, good friends with him as teenagers and whatnot growing up, and into our 20s and stuff. And Jeff was in the North Tower on the 106th floor at World Trade Center on 9/11, and was one of many who died not only in that tower but in the other tower, and everyone else who died on that day, which, good Lord, is coming up to 19 years ago, which is seems recent, but it's such a long time when you actually say the number 19. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go into the full story now, Mark, but basically, after the initial shock and that wave of grief and anger for a very short time, soon turned into just thinking and questioning a lot more about the circumstances surrounding my brother's death, and that was as early as sort of end of October 2001. And gradually over the years, whether in private with friends and family, or just randomly at bars and stuff, talking to people, I've talked about the things that are wrong with the official narrative, and certainly more my frustrations, and we'll get into all of that with basically how the attacks were investigated and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's been a long journey to get where I am right now, and I think the timing's really good, and yes, we'll get into that as well. But I do feel that there's an opening, a window now to finally shed a bit more light on what happened that day through the legal system, for what it is and all that its faults and all the rest of it. For me, that's always been an important aspect that's not been part of, I don't mean closure, but that normal process of when someone's been murdered, you normally expect an investigation, and you eventually hopefully get someone apprehended, charged, and it goes through the legal process to ascertain whether they're guilty or innocent. And we've not had any of that. Obviously, certainly I haven't, and for Jeff, but no one's had that really. Every single legal channel that's been explored by families has not actually ended up in a court. The closest we have is Gitmo, but we'll get on to Guantanamo, I'm sure. But yeah, so that's I guess why we're talking on this public channel that you started up, Mark. Long time coming.
Yeah.
Pleased that you are it, because I think you've got an awful lot of good stuff to say, and a massive, wide range variety of people who, I guess their expertise and experiences really cover a very broad aspect of all the beautiful madness of life. And and I'm just going to be part of that at the start of your channel. So I'm really happy to be talking to you.
Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate that. It's weird, having a mate And this but the thing is, this channel is only here because of 9/11, because of all of this weirdness that's been going on. And I would like to get into a bit of our journey together and the 9/11 story from our perspective, as I think that there's a human interest to that journey. But because I know that most people on these sorts of channels don't listen to the end all the time, because I'm a veteran at video analytics. Can you just sum up precisely? I mean, I got the email from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, Richard Gage, saying that this legal thing that you're about to do is possibly the biggest opportunity in history for 9/11 Truth. So let's sum that up. Now, as much as you can say, obviously you've got legal implications. I don't want you to say anything that's going to damage you in any way at all, obviously, because I'm 100% behind what you're doing, 110%. Say whatever it is that you can say about what it is that you're trying to do. And there is an aspect to this that is a fundraising aspect. So let's get that covered now, and then we can go into more of the background after that, if that's all right with you.
Sure. Yeah. So my brother had an inquest that was first opened, I think, in 2004, and then for some bizarre reason adjourned for 9 years, and was opened in 2013. And it was very much sort of rubber stamp, blasted through. I think they spent about 2 or 3 minutes discussing his individual case. There was 9 other British victims that were had separate inquisitions as part of that sort of joint inquest. They parroted essentially the official narrative, and they drew on sources like the 9/11 Commission report, the FBI, the chief medical examiner of New York, and just went through the motions. And my brother's had lots of remains identified in 2002, 2004, 2008. And then a few months after his inquest, he had further remains identified. And whilst the other remains are over in the UK and buried, and as part of it, I should explain, I guess not everyone's going to be a UK listener. In the UK, we have this thing called an inquest. And if someone's been killed overseas, or
we lost you there for a bit, Matt. The volume's gone. Yeah, we have a signal problem. Can you hear me, Matt?
Suspicious circumstances, including in the UK. But if you've been overseas, if you sorry. Okay.
Yeah, we lost the signal there. I lost about a minute of you talking.
Okay, what was the last thing you heard me say?
I don't know. I got so distracted by trying to hear what you were saying. I can't actually remember the last legible bit.
Okay.
No, I think we've got the gremlins here, Matt.
I was talking about the multiple remains that have been identified by my brother.
Yeah.
And in 2002, 2004, 2008, and 2013.
Yeah.
And the remains. Mark?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
It's yeah. I'm stuck where I am.
Maybe.
Show you back to the inquest. The remains.
Yeah, maybe if you stop video, that'll help us.
Okay.
Okay. Let's try this. Yeah, keep speaking.
Better, Mark.
That's better. That's better. We can hear you now. Do you want to try that again? So you're talking about the remains throughout the 2008.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is that better?
That is better. We can hear you.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So basically, my brother had multiple. Yeah. Okay. My brother had multiple remains identified, and a few months after the inquest, which is important. But the other remains were repatriated back to the UK. Is if someone's murdered overseas and their remains are repatriated, automatically there has to be an inquest. So, as I was saying, they rubber stamped, in my opinion, the inquest. They took that. They pretty much parroted the commission report, the FBI, and the chief medical examiner in New York. And they did the same for 9 other British victims, and it was all over very quickly. And so, for me, I never felt there'd been any sort of proper, like you say, investigation by the British authorities. I have always felt that the quickest way to getting evidence against the official narrative, but also exposing how flimsy in parts the investigation was, to actually expose that in a court of law, would be by trying to reopen my brother's inquest. And so the route that I have is through the Coroner's Act, which basically allows me to petition the Attorney General. Now, the Attorney General is appointed by the government, which obviously at the moment is the Conservative Party. She's the lady who's the Attorney General is actually an MP, but in theory they're supposed to be politically neutral and geopolitically neutral and all the rest of it. And so the idea is to petition her with all the evidence that's new and all the evidence that was not considered by the report was, so 15 people. But it's essentially to challenge that on the grounds that we've got new evidence. There wasn't a proper investigation looking at this sort of evidence. And what I'm looking to do is quash the original inquest and get the High Court to essentially instruct another coroner's court, the same coroner's court, to reopen the inquest. And then they'll be forced to look at there's a lot of stuff out there that challenges the official narrative. So in a nutshell, it's for me, it has been for a long time. I did try and start this sort of action about 5-6 years ago, but it just became rather exhausting. It's expensive and very time consuming. I needed a break. And the time is right now, I feel, to go and do this. And yeah, I mean, if we're successful, and so going back to the email that you received. So yes, I am using. I'd say the majority of the stuff is architects, engineers, which it's fairly limited in scope. They focus, because they're architects, engineers, on the physical aspects, the structural aspects of the attacks, and the majority of their work is to do with the collapse of the 3 towers on 9/11. It's actually quite a good fit with my brother's inquest, because an inquest is quite limited in scope. It's really focused on how did the person die, not exactly how did that person come about their death, but it's really focused on that. So it's actually perfect to go and challenge what I can within the UK. They did actually apply the official narrative, which they don't have to, but they did. So they didn't just say, "Oh, he died of multiple injuries." They said, "Oh no, it was part of a coordinated terrorist attack by Al Qaeda, where AA-11, American Airlines 11, was flown deliberately into the North Tower, which ultimately caused its collapse." What I'm specifically challenging is that AA-11 is the sole reason why the tower collapsed. And so we're putting forward the case that it was actually explosives and incendiaries that brought down the tower that Jeff was in. So either directly or indirectly, he was killed by explosives, and not AA11 being solely responsible for bringing down the towers. So it's all happened rather quick. I mean, I have been bouncing around the idea of restarting this for the last 2 years, but really has picked up speed the last 3-6 months. And yeah, the goal at the moment, I mean, it's not cheap. The barrister that we've got, he's got a lot of experience in what I'd call tricky areas. So he's done Palestinian rights, he's done Hillsborough, he's also representing families in the Lord Jana sexual abuse case. So, you know, he's an interesting barrister.
He's one of the good guys by the sound of him.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly been involved in what I'd say, they're not easy, and they're certainly controversial cases. But yeah, it comes at a price. And so the architects and engineers, you know, although they put up a little bit of the money initially just to get the ball rolling, that, you know, there is a drive to raise, I think it's about £70,000, which is what it's going to cost to get it into a formatted application that we push to the Attorney General. And just briefly sum up, because I know you said to do it at the start. So yeah, we're petitioning the Attorney General. If the Attorney General, who looks at the same law that the barrister looks at, and in my opinion, the barrister's opinion, well above the bar that's required, he should then give the authority, or the fiat, whatever it's called, to instruct the High Court to basically support what he's pushed onto them, to instruct a coroner's court to reopen or quash the initial inquest and then reopen the a new one. But you know, there's steps and there's a process along the way. It's not going to be quick. Assuming that we can get past the Attorney General, which I'm very hopeful of, you know, that the first, I'd say, resistance will probably be at the High Court, where not only can I guess, you know, the legal people get involved. So the coroner court, for example, could object, unlikely, but they could. But also third parties. So that's when we might get some interest from, you know, the US authorities, etc., or even British authorities. Who knows? So yeah, I mean, it's potentially big. Nothing's been in court. Like I said, nothing has got into a court of law, certainly challenging the official narrative in any way, shape or form over 19 years.
It's just extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, it'd be nice to, you know, it'd be great to go for the bigger story, the bigger picture. But, you know, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but this is potentially a way forwards to start that process, particularly if more family members come on board, both in the UK and the US. Or at least follow up on, if, you know, this case and where it goes. So yeah, it's kind of, it has the potential to be, you know, significant. Let's put it that way. However far it gets, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, also there's the timing of it as well during this pandemic, quite extraordinary.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. I still haven't met the barrister. When I spoke to him 4.5 years ago, it was online, just to save some money having to get him to go and travel to wherever we needed to meet up. And so yes, this is all being done online, and which is fine. You know, that's the nature of the work. But yeah, timing wise, given everything that's going on, and it's not just you know, COVID-19 and everything that's brought with it. It's other stuff, isn't it, going on behind the scenes? Which I know, you know, we've talked before about, and I'm sure you'll want to get into some of the sort of paedophile stuff that's going on right now, and where that could be going for justice for both the victims, but also obviously against those that have been doing that, and trafficking, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's interesting timing.
Well, you know my opinion. The people behind 9/11 are the same people behind the this. But we do have a sitting president in the US who's on tape from New York as a builder in New York as saying, "Yeah, it looks like controlled demolition to me." Have you seen that tape?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
And I'm hoping that, it's just amazing that nobody in officialdom has ever come out and talked about the truth about 9/11. But, we're up against incredible cognitive dissonance. I mean, when it happened, I was in intensive care when 9/11 happened. I think we've talked about that before. And then I got a phone, and then a week later, I can't remember how long it was later, but then I got a phone call from you, and I was working in Liverpool at the time. And I was like, "Hey, Matt, how you doing?" You said, "I'm in New York," because Jeff was in. I was like, What? And then I remember all of that unfolding, not obviously as vividly as you do, because it was just, you all went over to New York, didn't you? And then you had to shake hands with Bush and Clinton.
Oh, it was
Ugh.
it was an insane time. I mean, I'm sure anyone, whether it be a car accident or anything where someone has been killed or obviously murdered, it's such a shock to the system. And I mean, we're all in shock. So I was on holiday in Lanzarote with my wife and two kids at the time, only 6 months and 18 months.
Yeah.
My mum had flown out the day before to come and join us for a week. And obviously the shock, I won't go into the story about how we found out and stuff, but I remember the stress of trying to get on a flight back to the UK and then trying to get on a flight to New York, because obviously all planes were grounded, and it was just mad. And then the media circus started just as we were flying out the day before we flew out. I think we flew out on the Saturday, so it was like the Friday, I think the BBC and others started to contact us. But yeah, it was a very intense time. And but there's lots of people along the way who have helped me get to where I am right now. And I'm thinking particularly, a mutual friend of ours, who's my co-director at the time, Henry, who really started that process for me, sending me that John Pilger article on This War is a Farce, right for the Mirror time, I think, and that was end of October. And we can talk about other stuff about how he actually did start to wake me up in April that year, talking about how gold was manipulated, but that's another story. But that definitely was the starting point for me, looking at the military build-up in and around Afghanistan ahead of 9/11. That there was just lots of things that didn't feel right. Certainly in those first sort of 6 months, just looking at stuff, I started to get very uncomfortable with what I was reading. And then it kind of, as we know, more and more people started to speak out about stuff. Not always correct, not always right. Doesn't matter. It was just questioning.
Just questioning it is a heroic act in itself, because the pressure against you to do that is massive. And this is like one of the biggest crimes against humanity in history. And it must be resolved for us to move forward. And I truly, truly hope it will be resolved through this. And hopefully you will be part of that process, because it's not just about justice for Jeff. It's about justice for all of us. This is why this is so important. So I want to say at this point, we're still fairly early on the video. If anybody listening to this resonates with anything that we're talking about, I'm going to put a link near here where you can donate to this fund to help make sure that this thing happens. Even if it's £1, $1, anything, just please help this cause, because this is so, so important as far as I'm concerned. And I want to give it the best possible chance for success. The death of anybody is horrific, Matt, especially somebody you love. And, we've both been through lots of deaths of people that we love. But I want to talk about Jeff for a bit, because I want people watching this to really relate to what kind of a guy he was. I mean, Jeff was like the most handsome, the most funny, the most athletic. I mean, he was quite annoying, actually. He was too good at everything. I mean, he was a national badminton player. He was a genius mathematician. He was every woman would turn their head to look at him, even though we all took the piss out of him in the first year. I remember because of his amusing middle name, which actually is the name of one of my sons now. You know, just a beautiful, beautiful man. And you know, I've said on this channel that I've watched over your shoulder for 19 years, all the times that you've written to MPs, written to MI6, written to the FBI, the CIA, the president, you know, all of those processes, and then doing that play in London. And then, you know, even anybody watching this, Matt's even had people tried to discredit him online by saying that, you know, he was a made-up person. He wasn't a real person. I can vouch for the fact that Matt and Jeff are very, very real. And just the madness of all of that, you know, even down to you burning the 9/11 Commission outside in London, I think it was. And then I think you were on the Alex Jones show at one point, weren't you?
I think that, well, certainly with Tony Rook and his film, but I don't know how far that clip went, but that was kind of interesting. Yeah, burning the 9/11 Commission report outside the US Embassy.
Yeah.
And I had a kind of, you know, machine gun armed police officers come up to me and just ask me what I'm doing. Ended up having quite an engaging discussion with them. How much they took on board, I've got no idea. But you know, that was kind of a bit hairy. But I've done some stuff. But really, Mark, it's, you know, obviously it's my brother, but I've just been certainly when I first went public, which was really only 2013. You know, It was relentless, I'd say, for about 4 years.
Exhausting.
Every single channel I could possibly use, annoy, stir up, get them thinking about it, I went for it. You know, and that's not just the UK, but also the US. Every bloody embassy scattered around. You know, it was, if I can get hold of email addresses or physical addresses, and I could send stuff off. You know, contacting every MP in the UK. You know, I did it. And and also then contacting, you know, fire brigade unions, NIST, a lot of communications backwards and forwards with NIST. They were the body that were instructed by US government to investigate the collapse of the towers, as well as Building 7. And, you know, and just, it was just relentless. And it was a very kind of crazed period. I look back and I think, I can't believe actually the amount of volume of emails and stuff and research I was doing. You know, and I was just on a mission.
You know, it's just extraordinary. I mean, I'm going to mention that film that you did with Tony, Irrefutable.
Incontrovertible.
But
yes.
Sorry, if you're watching this, Tony, sorry.
Irrefutable evidence.
Incontrovertible, right. And that film's still up on YouTube, is it?
Yes, it's on, probably mirrored on Vimeo and stuff. But yes, I fell over the two main channels, which is mine and I guess Tony's have had over 1 million, and it's on other channels, so it's had over at least 2 million views.
And it's incontrovertible, but we're still in a situation where the official narrative stands. I mean, my son got told off when he was at school in Marrakesh when the social studies teacher was teaching the kids about 9/11 in their social studies class to 11-year-olds. And he put his hand up and said, what about Tower 7, sir? And the teacher didn't know what to say to him. Because that wasn't in the book, funnily enough. It wasn't in the manual on how to teach kids about 9/11. I mean, this is the kind of mind control shit that really gets my fucking goat. And, you know, and this is all related, and I think this is all relevant to this crazy time that we're living through, because this is all the New World Order as far as I'm concerned. You know, this was all planned out. 9/11's part of that whole plan. This pandemic was all part of that plan. They want 6.5 billion people dead. That's the plan, right? I can't remember if you exactly agree with my viewpoint on that, and I'm sure you probably don't, and that's fine. But do you see a good ending to all of this?
It's hard to know, because if you give up before you even started to fight, and I don't mean fight in a very literal sense, then obviously it's game over. Is it going to play out only with one ending? No, because I think we do have a chance to potentially change the course of where that could be going. Am I happy with what's going on? No, not at all. It's I've seen it in quite a few posts, and I've said it myself in Facebook and stuff. Are we seeing right now, and particularly more recently, but you could say the same over the last 19 years? Are we seeing a replay of the indifference that the Germans had in the 30s, or I imagine indifference or denial, or just hoping it's going to go away? That slowly clawing back of freedoms, of civil liberties, and just more intrusion by the state into your lives. Be it you're not carrying the right papers, whatever. And I'm kind of absolutely flabbergasted. More of my friends and people that I know aren't openly talking a bit more about where this stuff's going, particularly the stuff that's going on in New Zealand right now with containment camps, if you're quarantine camps, whatever the hell they're calling them. That should alarm everyone. And so I'm a little bit surprised but not surprised that people aren't discussing it, but also just how we seem to just be accepting stuff, because it's actually not that hard to challenge stuff. And whether it be a small thing of wearing masks, not wearing masks, doesn't matter. I mean, masks are kind of a part of it. It doesn't really matter. It's just the whole questioning stuff, going back to that, the importance of questioning stuff. Doesn't mean you're always going to get the truth or the right answers, or even end up believing the right stuff. It doesn't matter. Just to carry on, just for me, it's not unthinking, but it is almost like that, is incredible. Because I remember being back in that space, because I was at the time, whatever I was, 32.
Yeah.
So in April of 2001, when my co-director sat down, and gold at the time was $270 an ounce. And he sat down and said, I've got a couple of things to say to you. Number one, do you want to make some money? And number two, the world that you're working, because I worked in the financial industry as an IT person. He said, that industry is completely crooked. It's manipulated. It's rotten. Very corrupt. And I didn't really believe everything he said, but I was in a bit of shock. And but hey, gold's now over $2,000 an ounce, and things have unraveled, certainly in terms of exposing the manipulation that goes on in the markets. But up to that point, honestly, I hadn't really thought about anything. And so I understand the space that a lot of people are probably in, just not questioning stuff. But it's very hard for me to really go back and go, holy crap, to have not thought about any of the stuff that's just, shut up. So I don't mean not thinking about, stuff you might do I did maths and physics, but I'm not saying, because you do look at that and you examine stuff and you do experiments and a whole bunch of guff to reinforce, I guess, what you're being taught. But in a lot of stuff, you just taught stuff and there's no real way of proving whether it's right or wrong, particularly history, or certainly narratives, around important moments in history. It's very hard to not just challenge it, but to actually go back to first sources and is it right? Is it correct what they're saying to us? I'm rereading, even though it's quite mainstream, a book about JFK by the two guys who wrote 11th Day. And, there's stuff in there. They don't go into as much detail as I'd like to when there's anomalies, but, Christ, the first chapter, you should go, holy crap. The cover-up that went on in JFK's death is just staggering. And, so are we learning from history? No, because it goes on and on and on. Hillsborough, quashed inquiry or second inquiry. Bloody Sunday, first inquiry, whitewash. They had a second one. I'm not saying it was a perfect outcome afterwards, but it's like the first one is a bloody, in a lot of cases, a bit of a, let's just ring fence the official narrative, keep it all safe. Maybe a generation later they'll fight it, but it won't matter then.
It's a war of attrition.
That's IT 9/11. It's going to be a generation on, and maybe they think that's enough time for stuff to start coming out. But actually, we're seeing it to a certain extent with the CIA involvement with protecting hijackers, the Saudi angles, and whether they're accused of being limited hangouts doesn't matter. Stuff is coming to the surface, that there's been rumours about, but we've never had any proof. The 28 pages, all that kind of guff with Bush and Prince Bandar. Whatever he was called, but but yeah, so sorry, I digressed and went off on one then.
No,
But
that's fine. That's
you
fine.
know,
I'm just like thinking about, anybody watching this. There's a couple of interesting things. One is that Matt has been to Guantanamo Bay. He got invited there. He was going to go. I think you were going to go with your wife, but you ended up asking me. She didn't want to go, and then I got told I wasn't allowed to go, so I didn't go. But you did, and you must be one of few people that has been to Guantanamo Bay that isn't either a soldier or a convicted somebody. Um, what was that like? Because I was supposed to be with you, and I have that crazy theory that they tried to take you out with a hurricane called Hurricane Matthew.
yeah,
I
that
don't,
was
and I'm not asking you to give your opinion on that. I just, um,
no,
but
hang on. That Hurricane Matthew was, I think, 4 days after there was a fire that nearly burnt down my flat. So it was a bit of a peculiar time. So I can understand
well,
what.
yeah,
Probably,
I think God's been looking after you, to be honest.
mm,
In fact, I know he has. And that's funny coming from me because 20-year atheist. But
mm.
and you and I have had a lot of spiritual experiences as well, but we don't need to go into those on this call. Guantanamo Bay. What was that like, Matt? Do you want to just?
Yeah, I mean, it
That must
was.
be so strange.
I mean, for me, it's to put, I guess, that place in context for me is. I see so many elements of 9/11 important to investigate. And whatever their role, the people that are there, allegedly the people, whoever they are, whatever their role was, I just see that as another part of trying to piece together, and because you can still get a big picture out of what's going on there. I can't remember what the terrorist's name was in the late 80s and 90s, but there's a book about him called Gun for Hire. I know the David Shayler story, the whistleblower who uncovered the plot that MI6 had been funding Al Qaeda to assassinate Gaddafi. The intelligence arm uses these dodgy guns for hire to carry out some of their work. So for me, they could be still very much part of the plot, but it was hijacked and used to their advantage in lots of different ways. That's both carrying out the attacks and obviously the eventual never-ending war on terror. But yeah, Guantanamo. I think I was the first victim family member from Britain to go over there. So I went there. Was it 2017? I can't remember exactly. Maybe 2016. Can't remember. So a few months after this Hurricane Matthew, and it was just the most bizarre place. I've not really spent. I know you've been in the RAF and stuff. I've not spent a lot of time with military characters. There's one guy at university. I've got a friend who's was ex-army, and although I did a master's at a military place as a civilian, it's not something I used to. So it was very strange going to a completely military controlled base. Whatever the arrangement or the forcing that they forced Cuba to hand over this land for how many decades, years, 100 years, I don't know. But yeah, so there's these five guys who, I mean, almost by so there's five guys on trial there. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is probably the best known out of the five that are there. He's called the so-called chief architect once they basically dropped bin Laden as the chief bogeyman. He was put forward as the chief architect, and he's the uncle of Youssef, the 1993 World Trade Center bombing guy who got done. So there is some weird sort of connection there with my brother's death. So anyway, these guys are there. They've all been, tortured, not quite to death because they're still alive, but they've all been tortured. That keeps coming up in the court case, or the military tribunal, I should say. I got to meet the defense lawyers. I got to meet the prosecution lawyers and the chief prosecution chap there. And it's kind of weird. I mean, a lot of people have this idea that they think everyone is, part of the conspiracy. My reaching opinion, I guess, in my experience was most of them aren't. They're there doing their job. And they're just part of the system that's doing it. And they're good people, and whatever. But it was very odd. I mean, there were five guys obviously accused of being part of the murder of my brother. The security was kind of a bit nuts, as I guess you'd expect, a little bit over the top, really. I don't know what they expect these five guys to do. And, you know, my frustration there is, and I guess it's actually got parallels to my brother's inquest, actually, is it's quite narrow in scope. I mean, they aren't looking at a whole bunch of stuff. And I talked about it earlier, about the two guys who alleged hijackers of AA-77. And I know some would say the plane that allegedly hit the Pentagon. You know, the CIA were actively protecting them, both before they came to the States and once they were in. You know, the Saudi intelligence, GID, were almost certainly involved in protecting these guys. Now, I said, whatever their role, doesn't really matter. You know, none of that's coming out of this tribunal. So for me, it's just like, you know, they've got 5 guys, they've all been tortured, they're all going to get found guilty, I'm sure, and they'll all eventually face the death penalty. You know, which doesn't really change anything, doesn't really help anything. And you know, it'll probably drag on for years and years and years. And maybe that's the plan. I've got no idea. But Guantanamo is a very, very strange. It's a strange place. And yeah, sorry, Mark, just to finish off talking about them killing me off. When I came back from Guantanamo late December, wherever it was, 2017, 2016, I got pneumonia. So I survived that though. But listen, I mean, for me, it's like I said, it's limited in scope. It has a different set of rules. It's not, you know, typical federal legal system I have in the States. But my frustration is that, and I said at the start, there's not been any sort of what I'd call, you know, there's been a murder. There's no the process that I expected to happen has never happened. And this is just, again, a little opening into that. And so, you know, if evidence is ever produced to actually place the 19 hijackers through authenticated manifests and authenticated evidence, then great, because I'm pissed off that after 19 years, I can't get that through a freedom of information request as a family member to the FBI. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke that I can't get fundamental evidence backing up the official conspiracy theory, which is what it is. Ironically, by the way, those 5 guys, under the military tribunal code, the main charge against them, Section 10, conspiracy.
Well, yeah.
You know,
I mean, I feel like I should just explain to anybody under the age of 50 that Scottish accent you just did was from Taggart, for the TV series about murders in Glasgow.
it was bad. I apologise. Sorry.
No, it was good actually. I wanted to compete with you, but the subject was too heavy. It's been a mudder. It's just insane. It's insane. And, you know, I keep having flashbacks to, you know, 9/11 is the one subject that has got me closest to violence over the last 20 years. I remember my neighbor, you know, saying to my neighbor, look, this just doesn't make any sense. And I started talking and saying, look, Building 7, controlled demolition, airplanes don't look real, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. And he literally put his fingers in his ears and started going, la, 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 la. And I was like, what are you doing? He said, well, I don't want to hear this. I was like, why not? He said, because it would just destroy my worldview. I was like, well, that's a good thing, isn't it? I just literally didn't understand that. Another one was a mutual friend of ours, her husband, an American, very nice chap, came over for dinner, chit chat, a few drinks. Then I brought the subject up, and literally the guy nearly belted me. He had to be held down because he was like, "You can't say that, man!" And I was like, "What? All I'm doing is asking questions." And I've just been amazed at how violently people defend their position. Why they're not open-minded? I just find it extraordinary. I mean, is it just because some people are open-minded and some people aren't? I just don't understand it. And the reason why I asked you about Guantanamo Bay as well is just because very few people can say they know somebody who's been to Guantanamo Bay, right? And I think Guantanamo Bay is going to be very big in the news in the near future if I'm right, and lots of bad people being arrested and sent there for military trial. You know, I find it, you know that Trump, one of the first things Trump did when he got in was refurbish it and make it 10 times the size. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, you know, they were making room for somebody. Who's there exactly? We're going to find out at some point. I mean, either we're going to find out and we're going to go into a golden age, or we're all going to die. So that's why I don't care about doing this channel, because if I'm right, great. We all live a fantastic life, and if I'm wrong, we're all dead anyway. So I don't think there's any middle ground with any of this. So I think it's you are my friend, and I'm going to say nice things about you, but even if you weren't, you have inspired me enormously over the last 20 years, and my God, your family, just extraordinary. It's just extraordinary what you've done and what you're continuing to do, Matt. And I know it's been really, really tough, and really tough on the whole family. And but you've got my support, and you've got the support of thousands of other people, and I hope you can feel that and feel the love. And I know what you're doing is for the good of all of us. And I'm gonna see if I can get your video back on. Do you want to see if you can get your video back on?
Yep.
Because we seem to have quite a good signal, and I just want to see your face. There are tons of other things we could talk about, but I know you've given up time on your holiday, and I don't want to bore everybody with us reminiscing about this, that, and the other. And I think we've covered the main points that I wanted to cover, unless there's anything you wanted to add.
One of the things that I'm very pleased about is for a long time, my mum's always supported what I've done for Jeff. She still feels that he's still around her and guiding her and stuff. And but I think because of the strength of the case we've got right now, potentially reopening Brothers Inquest, etc., both my dad and my brother Rob have agreed to be part of that action, which to me is massive.
Yeah.
But particularly my dad, my brother, he's always has always wanted to just remember Jeff as he was, and nothing's going to happen. Of course, that's right. But my dad's always sort of, God bless, he does love the BBC, and he's struggled. Even though he's an architect, he struggled when I talked about Building 7, showed him stuff, and it was like, that looks odd. So I'm really glad that, I feel that it's not just me anymore. Let's put it that way.
That's amazing.
I should also say that, I have spoken to other family members, both in the US and the UK, other victim family members, other victims. And there is support. It's just very hard to, as we say, ask questions and be different to everyone else. That's both within your own family, let alone doing it publicly. It's hard.
No.
I encourage anyone to, not be afraid to just question stuff, even if you do get a burly American threatening to punch you or whatever. I get that, because that's probably the patriotism side and all the rest of it. But you shouldn't be afraid to question stuff. I mean, good Lord.
Well, fear is, Yeah, well, fear is debilitating, isn't it? It absolutely freezes people. Yeah. And they know that. They know how it works. They know us better than we know ourselves, and that's how they can get away with this crap for so long. But hopefully this is going to be over fairly soon. And I can only wish you all the best. And I'm here. And if you want to update every time on here, glad to have you. You know that. And we need to get together for a beer soon, because I've been to one pub in 6 months. And you've got a beer there. I know you have, because you're on holiday. So look, I really appreciate it, Matt. Let's catch up soon. And for anybody else watching this, don't forget to please share this. This is a really, really, really big moment potentially. And anybody who's vaguely interested in 9/11 truth or justice for the whole of humanity, send the links. Go to the link. Encourage them to donate, especially if they can afford a few quid. Fabulous. So good luck with reaching that target. Good luck with the case. Give my love to the family, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers, mate, and yours, mate. Take care.
Cheers, mate.
See
you later. Bye.